office in this year in its expanded Europe region, which includes Turkey, Israel, and Eastern European countries, in addition to the UK. Other key models are the urban cruiser small SUV developed by Suzuki and an extensive rework of the BZ4X midsize SUV. The decision to buy insurance and pooling with Tesla for 2025 derived from the combination of two factors, Nocotter said. The CHR Plus, urban cruiser and revised BZ4X won't reach the market until the third quarter of this year and will have minimal impact on EV sales. At the same time, he said, there is still a significant gap between regulations and real customer demand for EVs. Further complicating matters, Nocotter said, is a very tough competition from other automakers who are also trying to convince their customers to switch to EVs. Title, Air and Northvolt files for bankruptcy as cash runs out. Content. Stockholm, Northvolt, the Swedish maker of battery cells for electric vehicles, said it has filed for bankruptcy in Sweden, bringing to an end Europe's best hope of developing a rival to major Asian EV battery players. The company was unable to secure the necessary financial conditions to continue in its current form, and Northvolt, which has over 5,000 employees, said in a statement on March 12. A trustee appointed by a Swedish court will now oversee the bankruptcy process, which will include the sale of its assets and settling its outstanding obligations as far as possible. Northvolt sought US Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection last November as its cash pile dwindled, trying to secure funds that would allow it to fix persistent problems in scaling up output at its flagship plant in northern Sweden. At the end of January, its debt stood at more than $8 billion across the 9 Northvolt entities in the Chapter 11 process, documents have shown. The bankruptcy is one of the biggest in Swedish corporate history and the most high-profile one since that of now-defunct carmaker Saab Automobile more than a decade ago. In this episode of the Ally All Ears podcast, Aaron Lee, Senior Director at Ally Dealership Insurance, discusses the growing threat of cyber attacks on dealerships and the importance of staying vigilant. He shares essential tips for safeguarding against these risks and highlights the need for specialized cyber insurance coverage to protect your business. Northvolt's operations in North America and Germany were not filing for bankruptcy in their jurisdictions, and any decision regarding those units would be made by the trustee in consultation with lenders, the company said. The company's Polish entity was also not included in the bankruptcy filing, an internal document seen by Reuters showed. Europe's auto sector had hoped Northvolt would reduce Western automakers' reliance on Chinese rivals such as CATL and EV and BYD. The company, whose motto was Make Oil History, received more than $10 billion in equity, debt, and public financing since its 2016 inception, counting Volkswagen Group, with a 21% stake, and Goldman Sachs, holding 19%, as its biggest owners. Northvolt early last year clinched a $5 billion green loan deal with a group of lenders, intended to pay for a large plant expansion, but the funding was later cancelled as the company's problems mounted. BMW cancelled a $2 billion order in June of last year as the battery maker failed to deliver on a long-term supply contract for battery cells signed in 2020. Former Northvolt CEO Peter Carlson, who stepped down shortly after the Chapter 11 filing in November, said at the time of his departure that the company needed up to $1.2 billion to restore its business. Several owners have in recent months written down their stakes to zero, while longtime partner Scania said this week had lined up a new supply of battery cells in addition to the truckmaker's deal with Northvolt. Title, Air, and next for Nissan. New CEO Ivan Espinosa starts crafting a turnaround plan plus. Content. Tokyo, Nissan Motor Company is getting a new CEO and a revitalized executive team charged with devising a turnaround plan plus, and this time, making the fix stick. But product planning boss Ivan Espinosa, tapped March 11th to succeed CEO Makoto Uchida, inherits a host of headaches with little time to engineer a better trajectory. With confidence sagging in Uchida's plans, the outgoing boss unveiled a new revival plan in November after Nissan slumped to a net loss in the July-September quarter. He planned to slash billions of dollars in costs, cut 9,000 jobs and trim global capacity 20% by March 31st, 2027. For Nissan's board, however, those cuts were neither deep nor fast enough. Espinosa is tasked with turbocharging that plan and taking it to the next level. We call it now Turnaround Plan Plus, to express that we are not satisfied with the current one, said a person familiar with leadership's thinking. We must go further. That's the priority. But as Espinosa takes the wheel April 1st, the big question is, what's next for Nissan? In this episode of the Ally All Ears podcast, Aaron Lee, Senior Director at Ally Dealership Insurance, discusses the growing threat of cyber attacks on dealerships and the importance of staying vigilant. He shares essential tips for safeguarding against these risks and highlights the need for specialized cyber insurance coverage to protect your business. Nissan faces two immediate crises, fixing its all-important US business and stabilizing finances to rekindle positive cash flow, analysts and company leaders say. Speaking at his March 11th news conference after being appointed new global boss, Espinosa deflected detailed questions about his own thoughts on how to tackle these problems. He promised to bring a stability and growth back to the company. He also said he wants to implement a 360-degree look at the entire North American operation and prioritize reinforcing our lineup in the US. Nissan says it has enough cash on hand and lines of credits to keep the business running. But the auto business is bleeding cash and needs propping up, especially in the US. Spurring American sales is a tall order until Nissan can introduce long-awaited hybrid versions of its popular Rogue crossover. A plug-in hybrid version based on the Mitsubishi Outlander isn't expected to land until late this year at the earliest, followed by an e-power version in 2027. Until we are able to bring a hybrid solution to the US, how to stabilize the US market situation and survive until then is the most important question, a person close to planning said. Until then, Nissan is expected to drum up as much cash as possible through liquidating assets, the person said. That could include a fire sale of land, buildings, facilities, and other holdings. Still on tap is more action on factory closures. In February, Uchida said 3 plants would be closed.